All right, well, if you would turn in your Bibles to Genesis 32, and we'll read just two verses this morning, 24 and 25. And we'll let's get this going here. Here we go. Why didn't somebody read before I comment? Actually, let me comment first because we've been talking about this idea of liminal space. We looked at a few weeks ago. This idea of liminal meaning threshold. And the way I've cast this, the way I'm interpreting this story and teaching this story is that Jacob, after many, many, many years of experience, is in a place now to receive. And it's a terrifying place. It's a very hard place. He thinks the end is about to happen. And I've identified that place as what's called liminal space. And that's not new with me. It's a term that I've, picked up and recognized from a lot of different perspectives. Liminal space, he reaches within what allows him to go into that space is he reaches what I've called a necessary limit. It's when, basically, guys, when we're ready to listen. We come to a place in our life where we're ready to listen, ready to receive. And within that space, he's about to be involved in full engagement. And what that means is there's a physical aspect, verses 24 and 25. Notice the stranger comes to him. There is no dialogue at all. They move right into wrestling, which I think is significant. And after wrestling until dawn, then the dialogue, the exchange happens, which gives us light interpretation of what is happening in this match. So we're going to read 24 and 25, and 25 is the end of the physical engagement. So full engagement meaning physical engagement, of which we're looking at today, and then next week we'll be looking, I think next week, depending how far we get, we'll look into the dialogue or the, I've got engagement there too. I can't, but it's the interchange, dialogue, as far as that aspect of the engagement. So, all right, let's read 24 and 25.
Then Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. And when he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he touched the socket of his thigh. So the socket of Jacob's thigh was dislocated while he wrestled with him.
Isn't this an amazing story? I mean, there's so much mystery here. Mystery of who is this person? We think we all would vote that there is a divine presence, and that's what I'm talking about here. This is a major crossroads in this man's life. Jim and I were talking earlier. None of us have had a stranger come to us in the night to wrestle, but intuitively, we all have wrestled at night. We all, and that is how we're looking at this text in this study. So there is the review, and so as we look at this wrestling match, picture, I didn't put the picture here, but the little picture of Jacob, my little funky drawing of picture of Jacob on the rock. He's alone on the rock. He's done everything he can possibly do. Now it's just wait for brother to arrive. And so as we're looking at him there on the rock, I thought where I'd go with this today is that to ask the question, what is it that Jacob is bringing to this encounter? What is it that he is bringing to this encounter? And I came up with four things, four very broad things and these things are key times in Jacob's life that we've studied that are informing this encounter. It's what he's bringing to the match. First of all, Number one is the purchased birthright. From a very young age, Jacob was taught the lesson, similar to you and I, that Jacob is not good enough. Being Jacob is not good enough. It had to be. What other reason would there be to try to manipulate the birthright out of his brother? His brother had something that he needed because what he had inside of him wasn't good enough. And that's my whole posture for this teaching, is that what's true of Jacob is true of you and I through what we call the fallen nature, is that we all have within us this innate feeling that we don't measure up. And this demonstrates it. Why would he want to steal? Why would he want to buy the birthright? Because his brother had something that he thought he needed. That idea was reinforced a few years later through his mother's message that, you know, son, you and I, your brother has the birthright, and we need to get you the birthright. That message right there not only was an internal message, but it was an external message to him. Jacob, you don't measure up. Being Jacob is not good enough. That's the point. Being you, son, is not good enough. We have to strategize on how we are going to work together to get you what you need, because you are not good enough. Do you see my logic there? Yeah. And so thus we have this convoluted, very strategic, manipulative story of this stolen blessing. Very complex story of how they went and stole this blessing. The third is being publicly duped by Laban. Imagine working, 7 years for a hand in marriage, full intention, going through it, doing everything that that he did everything that he was supposed to do, and then on the night of the wedding, he's duped. And everyone in the community knows he was duped. Everyone knows how Laban duped him and how that must have felt to be duped and manipulated and deceived, and how that would have brought up other memories in Jacob's life of how do you think he may have thought what goes around comes around? I mean, we would have to think that he thought of an equivalent to that phrase at that time. And then as the years progress, he's stuck in a dead-end role. He's stuck. He's there working for his father-in-law under the loose control of his father-in-law, making his father-in-law successful. And he feels, again, controlled and manipulated over time. I mean, that's what the story reads out. He wanted to get free. He wanted to leave because he feels he can't, he's been given a raw deal. So this is what he's bringing to the match. And I've got my little picture there of these guys are going to square off, and they're going to do battle here in this match. So, and he's fully engaged, both through his mind and through his physical, through his body. There's a full engagement that's about to happen. Now I've taken this idea now, and if this is what he has brought to this, and my little arrows here are to show, what Jacob is bringing to the encounter. Arrow 1 right here pointing to this is what I just had pasted in the other slide. Okay, that's where we're starting. So what effect has all this had? That's what this slide, we're going to expand a little bit. And I came up with these this is what happened, and this would be the foundation behind it or under it. the purchased birthright here, number 1, corresponds to this first one. Well, I didn't get what I needed. When this happened, the purchased birthright. Well, I didn't get what I needed, so I have to work for it. That would have been the underlying message. There's the message that I have to work to get what I needed because I was not given that. Number 2, the underlying message behind this one is I don't measure up. The stolen blessing, well, even Mom says I don't measure up. So number 3, I look like a fool, corresponds to number 3, being publicly duped, where his father-in-law made him look like a fool, deceived him. And then number 4 is being stuck for years. How could I, or why did I allow this to happen to me? Hey, guys, these are all questions that many of us have asked in our lives. Is how could I have allowed that to happen? And you kick yourself over and over. So these are the underlying messages. And then the arrow, then the flow of the slide goes this way. And what the result of this, the result of this is it creates inner turmoil, inner conflict of anxiety, things like anxiety here. Anxiety, frustration, self-absorption, where you walk around and you just kick yourself. God, just how could I allow this to happen? And or we hide it. We learn to hide it. We learn to deny it. And then I thought we manage it. We go through life managing this low-level stuff that's informing our decisions and our interactions, and it's just lying under the surface. And especially as Christians, we have God talk, and that kind of sugarcoats the whole thing. But there's an underlying core of real damage that has gone into this man's life, but we attempt to beat it. I will not allow this to overcome. I'm never going to allow this to happen again. Maybe some of you have said that, or some of you have known someone who said that. You make this vow that I'm never going to look like a fool again. But this is all negative stuff. The stuff that's been whirling. We got to believe in the life of Jacob all of these years, and now it's going to come to a head here. We're going to see some really interesting things. And then, so getting back down to the slide here, the reason I put this over here is the goal here, the goal that Jacob came up with. Now, guys, you got to understand, I don't see this in the text. This is my opinion, so you can take it for what it's worth. I'm trying to make sense out of this story, and this is how I'm making sense out of it. So the goal in his head could have been something like, I'm going to overcome this because I'm not good enough. I'm going to overcome this through applying, key word here, guys, is resistance. It's resistance. It's part of our human nature. Oh, resistance. What is it that when we're in an argument with our spouse comes to us with something, and we can feel it. What color do we paint the living room? Whatever it is, and I don't really care, but some guys do care. But some, I don't know what.
The switch.
Where to eat, where to go out. You're in the car. Where do we go out to dinner? And you say, honey, where would you like to go? I don't care. Well, that's not true. So you make us say, no, this is another bad example. She comes with some issue, and then you feel it. Guys, you and I feel it inside before we say anything, if we're wiser. And heated argument. It goes way beyond where to eat dinner, but you got this heated argument, and the whole idea in our human nature is to try to get one up, is to try to come back through the tool of resistance, which is butting heads, which is a wrestling match, to try to get a hold. And then our lovely wives, because they're made out of the same stuff as you and I, is they then use their leverage, whatever that leverage is. It's different than brute force like we try to use. They have a different strategy, and they're much smarter. And they outsmart us, and they then come up. And so the whole thing just extrapolates. And what's true at the marriage level is true at the social level in organization, business, church. God, we're all vying for our position to defend ourselves, to get our point across, to win. In the Christian context, guys, in our conservative background, we got to be right. We got to be right. We got to be right. And I'm right. That means you're wrong. Well, we're talking to other people and say, we got to be right.
It's better to be happy than right.
No, you can't be happy, don't be right.
I would certainly say it's, yeah. There's a lot of truth to that. I would call it
In your marriage.
to be at peace. Yes, in your marriage, definitely. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Someone once told me that everything we do to win or to keep from losing.
There you go. Yes.
Here's a surrender of 5 words that really makes you a winner. I was wrong. I'm sorry. All of a sudden, it's all done.
You know, that is so true, but it is so, Jim, it is so hard to do that. Especially with someone as close as our spouse. I might be easy for me to say that to you, but to say that to our spouse, it's difficult. You know, the more equity there.
Well,
Yeah.
But let's get personal. Let's touch on our theology and the fact that our differences, and I think a lot of times the differences, of course, a lot how we're brought up, or who affected us, or which religious guru we're following, but also our personality plays into that. I mean, if thinkers, feelers, or doers, we tend to be drawn to certain types of ways of viewing God and drawn to certain denominations, and you go into the yellow pages and you can sort those denominations out by thinkers, feelers, and doers, or other different ways. And we tend to gather around birds of a feather. And, but it's also because there are Christians that they got this a little bit wrong, and I want to be with the group that's most right. We're not perfect, but we're most right. And I think that just creates a huge, thick chunk of paper in the yellow pages from the category called churches.
You know what? The way I'm trying to cast this, and I'm being intentional about just taking the time, because in our frame of reference, we believe, well, I have believed, I can't say we, but I have believed primarily that spiritual growth and maturity comes through the vehicle of information. And I think some information, we think the more we know, we equate that with growth and transformation. And I just don't think that's true anymore. I think information is important, but it is primarily through what we're talking about here is coming to an awareness of how much of this resistance drives my life and how much I need to let go. That is where the true work, and it is hard. It is so hard, especially for us who are sophisticated Christian people, because we come into a camp and we think we're right now. You know, we were wrong and now we're right, and you need to be right too. And that working out of that frame of reference really puts us at a social disadvantage. You know, how we interact with people, we tend to categorize people into you're in or you're out. Yeah. Are they in or are they out? And that has some serious ramifications as far as we compare the life and the model of Jesus Christ. That has huge deficit there. Anyway, so here is this thing here of Jacob, what he's bringing, the messages that I've put in there is that I think he's playing in his head, and down here, guys, is the this is the damage. This is the damage, and the whole idea, the reaction, it's a resistive reaction to I'm going to overcome this. Yeah. So, next slide is I'm calling this the wound. This is what I'm calling the wound. This process of these inner messages and the damage that those things happen. And I'm proposing that every man in this room has a wound. Now, we are at different levels of awareness of that wound. But guys, it is not bad to have a wound. It's part of it's part of this life. It's why Jesus died on the cross, to resolve it. And the sooner we recognize is that, gee, we've got this wound, what do we do with it? Jesus. He is the answer. But we'll do everything in our power to protect it, to deny it, to nurture it, because we get this weird sense of satisfaction about it. And therein lies the problem. Therein lies what took this man some 90 years to get to a point where, okay, I am now ready to wrestle. I'm now ready to wrestle. You know, we've been playing, we've been singing and dancing the dance of the 7 veils through most of my life, but now I am ready to wrestle. This is the point where I think Jacob is at in his life, and I'm gonna call this week Ready to Wrestle.
So Mike, is this wound, you're talking about the wound that exists prior to the wrestling match?
Yeah, this is what he's bringing to this match. This is Bill, you got to understand. I'm trying to make sense out of this.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes.
If we would look at our wounds as a pain, and anytime we have a pain, if we could ever get it out of our mind that it's not bad, a pain tells you there's something wrong. No matter what it is, whether it's a physical pain, emotional pain, something is wrong, and it's a warning.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we got this theology that when I accept Christ as my Savior, all of a sudden He heals all our wounds, and guys, I gotta propose to you that there's a lot of work that has to be done in the transformation, and it's primarily not about improving our lives. It's more about letting go. And therein lies the language of Jesus about dying. We're trying to make sense out of what it means to die to self. You know, we talk about this, but guys, I've been a believer a long time, and now at 61 years old, I'm starting to get some language and some understanding a little bit more. And it doesn't come about it by memorizing Bible verses, although that's not wrong. But it's hard work, and it's like wrestling.
Mike, do you think that, well, you don't have to answer that. I don't have to phrase it as a question. I'll say
yeah.
I tend to think we come to a point in our lives. There's a mystery here in terms of who this person is that Jacob is wrestling with.
Yeah.
And, my little Bible says Jacob wrestles with God at the top, you know, it's not,
Mhm.
not necessarily inspired, but it's imprinted.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
But, you know, I think God wants to bring us to a point where ultimately we realize that these individuals that say we are resisting and they are resisting us, and this woundedness, ultimately we come to the point where we're wrestling with God over these things, because these things are given to us in a sense by God. And you know, our wrestling match really is with Him, isn't it? Over what He has given to us.
Well, let's look.
And
Yeah.
we.
That's a great question, yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's go at a higher level. I always have thought, you know, Jesus wrestled with God. It sounds hard, but He did in the Garden of Gethsemane. You know, they had a wrestling match there of a sort. It was a cup, you know, and He said, okay, and He let him win, and he got a wound. And he still carries that wound. I don't know how to play that, but it's pretty.
Oh, we're gonna look at that.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
But guys, this is so fast, so core, and at our age is just golly, we want to sink into this thing, and the end game is the amazing appreciation for what Jesus has done for us. That's where this is headed, and this is a wonderful picture because we've never had a stranger come at night, but we've all wrestled at night.
The word submission is a tough one. When in the times of the Bible, when they would meet in the city gates, when you would have your trial with the elders and the other members of the city, they would take their shoes off and give them to if we were sitting there, I would take my shoes off because I was found wrong in the situation. That was a submitting to my error and my wrong. And we, this, in any language in the world, what is that?
Surrender.
That's surrender.
Yeah.
And that's what we have trouble with, because none of us want to give up us.
Right. Yeah.
I sure spend a lot of time wandering around with my shoes off.
Is your wife Ida?
Talking about humiliation there.
Just being wrong.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So there's the wound. There's the wound, and I've already stated what at least my view of it is as we go into this story. This is what Jacob is bringing to this match. So now we're going to set the match up. And when you think of a match, you think of two opponents. Always two opponents. And I've shrunk the previous slide, and I put it within a framework now that this is Jacob's life, and it's primarily a life like you and I, that we have things that have informed our actions, and I think it's a life that the border, his life is a life that carries an open wound. It's a wound, and he's learned how to masterfully work with that wound, and his primary mode of operation, like I would again propose to us all, like all human nature, is resistance. There's the key word, is that we naturally resist. And I get this out of Genesis chapter 3. Genesis 3. The man and the woman ate of the fruit, and they saw that they were naked, and they needed something else. They needed something. They were not acceptable anymore. And therein lies the core of, I think, what human nature is in this world. And that's the end game of that is what we're talking about here. So therein is Jacob. And notice the double barrier here. I want you to see this, is that he's on this side. This is what he's bringing to this match. And there's a huge barrier, because in our heads, we see things as divided. We naturally see things. We see things as, well, again, like our example, I'm right, you're wrong. Can anybody see this? And it creates resistance and defensiveness. And so we see things naturally because of our just the way we are built to see in black and white. Especially and I'm proposing especially, and I'm talking about me here, especially from my conservative background. This is how I've been taught. And so we go on, and now we look at the other side. And I'm proposing this. Again, this is all out of my head, guys, so I'm trying to make sense out of this. Is that this stranger came to Jacob. I don't think, let me backtrack. I don't think the stranger came to Jacob dressed in a leotard with the word wrestler across the I don't think that's the case at all. Someone came to Jacob, and I believe Jacob engaged the stranger in wrestling. Herein lies my point. Jacob needed to wrestle. Jacob was now at a point in his life where whoever it was, you'll do, and Jacob said, let's go for it. I need to wrestle. I need to be physically engaged here, and I need an opponent. Okay, therein lies my thesis here.
Because there's a deep anger in this.
Oh, there's got to be. With what this guy's been through?
Yeah, something, what's gone wrong? Why?
Yeah.
Who can I personify to be the person I can kick the snot out of to
Yeah.
be happy about?
I think, Bill, I think you hit it right there. That's exactly right. And we can all identify that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Jacob needed to wrestle. And something, and he went into to fully conquer, just like he's gone through life, to overcome through resistance. But we find a very different opponent. And that's what we'll pick up on next week. Give you something to chew on.
Thank you.
Did you know that Jacob had a Russian name?